because he was electric. You just didn't know what was going to happen.
He was like a Bengal tiger, this beautiful animal that was so captivating, but dangerous at the same time.
If I had met Jesus Christ himself, I couldn't have been more overwhelmed. It was like being in the presence of a deity.
He was almost a godlike figure.
He's a baseball god.
He really studied his game. He was a master at it.
They loved putting on a show.
To look at, he was gorgeous. He was a beauty to watch.
He loved his swing. He had a beautiful swing.
His swing was a work of art.
His bat being the brush and Fenway Park is the canvas.
What he said himself was that his only desire was to walk down the street and have people say, "There goes the greatest hitter who ever lived."
He took that one aspect of baseball and perfected it.
Baseball holds out the possibility of perfection, and keep hitting, the game never ends. So it's out there.
He was so focused on what he wanted to do, and it was to the exclusion of everything else.
He was obsessed with hitting.
Everything about him is interesting in this gnarled, difficult way. I mean, he was that way himself. What's the matter with him? What do you constantly ask about that? What's wrong with this guy? What a weirdo. What a great hitter.
What's up, everyone? I'm Cardi-C, the baseball card collector, and today we're talking one player and one player only, and that is Ted Williams, the Splendid Splinter and the greatest hitter to ever walk this planet. Yes, I said it, the greatest hitter to ever walk this planet. We're going to take a look at some stats today to back that up before I reveal my biggest sport card purchase to date. It's a purchase I'm very proud of as someone that collects mostly modern cards. This is my biggest vintage purchase. And before we hop into Ted Williams, I'm just going to talk a little bit about modern versus vintage collecting. I think there's lots of value to be had by building out a well-rounded collection that focuses both on modern and vintage cards. As someone who grew up in Boston or around Boston and sees Ted Williams' name all over the place, you know that he is a staple on the Boston sports Mount Rushmore, but I never really knew who he was as a person or as a player. And through purchasing this card, I did a lot of research about his stats and who he was as a person. And the clip that you saw from the beginning of the video was actually from a docu-series called American Master that PBS put on. If you're into documentaries in the history of baseball, I highly, highly recommend it. You can rent it from Amazon for $3.99. Well worth the price of admission. Or if you're into reading and you would rather digest a biography, I'm currently reading Ted Williams, his biography written by Lee Montville. It's a beast. It's pretty long. It's like 400 pages, but both great mediums for you to learn a little bit more about the history of the game, and it just makes collecting the card itself so much more meaningful and worthwhile. Before we hop into it today, though, if you enjoy today's content, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe for future content, and hit that bell if you'd like to get a notification every time I publish a video. So without further ado, let's hop into it. Ted Williams set out to become the greatest hitter who ever lived, and over the course of his 21-year career, he accomplished exactly that. He didn't transcend the sport and become a pop culture icon like Ruth. He didn't hold the attention of a nation during a record-setting hitting streak like DiMaggio, and doesn't quite hold the number of all-time records like Bonds, Aaron, or Pete Rose. Regardless, Ted Williams was a better hitter than all of these guys throughout his career. He lost the better part of 5 seasons, 3 to World War II and then 2 to the Korean War, while serving as a pilot in the Marine Corps, but despite losing all that playing time, Williams still ended up tallying 521 home runs. He holds the record for the highest on-base percentage of all time at 482. He was a 19-time All-Star. He won 2 MVP awards and 2 Triple Crowns. If we take a look at the years he came in second in the MVP voting as well, there's a very strong case that he could have been a 5-time MVP award winner. In 1941, this was Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, so I guess you can't fault the voters for giving that to him. But besides the hitting streak, WAR, runs, not hits, home runs, RBIs, Ted kept pace or bested Joe DiMaggio. But then again, in 1942, Joe Gordon won the MVP. Yet Ted Williams outpaced him in the majority of counting categories. A higher WAR, more hits, more home runs, more RBIs, a higher batting average, a higher on-base percentage, higher slugging and OPS. Take a look at 1947 after the war. This was it was a very close race, 202 for DiMaggio and 201 for Ted Williams. But we look at the stats, 9.5 WAR to 4.6, runs 125 to 97, hits 181 to 168, home runs 32 to 20. I think, much like Mike Trout today, a strong case could be made for Ted Williams to have won many more MVPs, specifically during those seasons. That would have just boosted his status up tenfold. The other thing I wanted to point out was in terms of career WAR, he ended up at 121.9, and this again is with 5 seasons lost to military service. You look at his compatriots during this time frame, mainly Joe DiMaggio and Hank Greenberg. Hank Greenberg's all the way down at the bottom of this list, so we won't even look at him. But Joe DiMaggio came in at number 41 with a 79.1 career WAR, almost half of what Ted Williams had put together. If he was able to string together another 5 seasons, putting a WAR of 8 to 10, which he was putting up every year anyway, he'd be your number 1 player of all time, hands down. So that question in particular got me thinking. If we look at the career WAR per season, the average career WAR per season, where does Williams rank amongst the best of all time? Now, this information was taken from a website called hypertext.com. It did a pretty comprehensive breakdown of WAR and adjusted WAR and WAR per 365. But these were the stats that fit my agenda, so these were the ones that I leveraged. Babe Ruth, 10.48. Barry Bonds, 8.83. Willie Mays, 8.47. Lou Gehrig, 8.41. Ted Williams settles in right at second place there. He wasn't the greatest fielder, so this 9.22 is totally driven by his ability to hit the baseball. For Babe Ruth, these seasons are a bit artificially inflated by the years that he was hitting and pitching. So this 1048 is a career WAR number, but this is not solely because of his hitting, which is why I'm making the argument today that Ted Williams is the greatest hitter of all time. But enough about Ted Williams, the player. Let's turn the camera on and take a look at my biggest pickup to date, the 1951 Bowman Ted Williams.
And now, our feature presentation.
Now, here it is. My first Ted Williams card, the 1951 Bowman, card number 165 in a PSA 6. Zoom in a little bit. This card is an absolute beauty of an example. The top to bottom centering is virtually perfect. Your left to right centering is probably 60-40. It's virtually free of any surface imperfections. You got a couple print defects with some dots down here. If we flip over to the back, this looks perfect. No printer defects, no paper loss, no fading of the text. Corners look sharp. The previous owner, before it got slabbed, took very good care of this. There's some aging up at the top of the card, but it's nothing that you'll really see unless you're looking for. I'm so happy to add this to the set. A little bit about 51 Bowman. This was the second year that Ted Williams was in Bowman. His Bowman debut was in 1950, and it was a card that looked a lot like this, actually. They used the same source painting for the card. In 1950, the card was 2 1/3 inches. The 51 Bowman is 3 to 3 1/3 inches. And they made a couple adjustments. Let me know in the comments below if you can explain or you have some insight into why these changes were made. But they added a nameplate to the bottom, and then they actually added clouds to the sky. So I'm not sure if they were just looking to spice things up a little bit, or if there was any thought behind it, but I'm interested to know. So if you guys have any knowledge about those changes, please be sure to let me know. He was in Bowman in 1953 and 1954 as well, but the 54 Bowman was actually a lot rarer than you would have otherwise thought, because 1954 was the first year that Williams signed exclusive with Topps. So Bowman had already printed this full photo color set, and they had started releasing it. Williams signs exclusively with Topps, and then they have to go back and pull all these packs from the shelves and take his card out of it. So when you're looking for his cards in 1954 Bowman, it's a lot more rare. This card, there's been like 2,200 copies graded. I think I checked the PSA Pop report earlier today. The 6, there's 346 cards or examples graded. A PSA 5 or 6 is really your entryway to being investment grade. It's something that I've been looking out for probably a year and a half now. I was looking for something that presented well, that had minimal paper loss, that had decent centering at the right price. And you really got to strike a good mix and then set your eBay alerts to find something like this. I know the current adage is pay up for your superstars. You can buy at tomorrow's prices to make sure you add something to your collection. And although I'm not a vintage expert, I don't think that adage holds true for vintage. If you wait long enough on a card like this that's widely circulated, there's 2,000 graded copies out there. They're popping up in the marketplace all the time. Patience really pays off. I had been looking at a lot of 3s and 4s that had pretty bad defects that just took away from the overall eye appeal of the card. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I really enjoy modern collecting. I got a couple other cards on my desk right here. 2018 Update Acuna, and then Soto. And I don't think I'm going to go away from collecting those guys, but it's good to switch things up a little bit. Being a Boston sports fan, you see Ted Williams' name all over the place, from Ted Williams Tunnel to the famous home run seat in right field where he crushed a ball. I think it was 505 feet or something ridiculous like that. But unless you take the time to do some research about who he was as a man and who he was as a player, I don't think you can really appreciate the cards that depict who he was as a player. This card is definitely going to be a gateway card for me. I got my eyes on his 39 play ball and the 2 1954 Topps cards, and I'll add those to the collection someday, but I'll take the same approach as I took to this. So there you have it. Ted Williams, the player, the card, the Splendid Splinter. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for future content. I'm Cardi-C, the baseball card collector. Till next time, I'll catch you guys later.